Good afternoon. It's Dr. John Bennett broadcasting from the beach today in Miami Beach for Neurosurgical TV. Today we are graced with the presence of a group of neurosurgeons, one of whom is Naru Bankal, a neurosurgeon from Morocco. He's going to be giving the first presentation, and we have a few other neurosurgeons on the panel. Let's introduce them first. First, we'll start with the youngest, Zolo.
Hello everyone, I am Zolo Ivan. I am a CPA medical student from Cameroon, and I am a member of the Association of Future African Neurosurgeons. It's a pleasure to be here with you all.
Okay, I bumped you off the screen share, Bankal, to introduce everyone. Hello, Zolo, welcome. Okay, Marco, welcome.
Hello everybody, my name is Marco Meloni. I'm a consultant neurosurgeon in North Italy. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. A frequent contributor here. Welcome, Marco. Musendo.
Hello, I am neurosurgery in Maputo Central Hospital in Mozambique.
Okay, we may have lost that in the connection. Yeah, Musendo is a neurosurgical resident from Zimbabwe, correct?
Mozambique.
No, yeah, that's right. Okay, so welcome. And Bouer Fa, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everybody. I'm Dr. Bouarifa. I'm the resident in training in neurosurgery in the University Teaching Hospital of Marrakesh.
Very good, and welcome.
Nice to see you.
Welcome, and he's going to give a presentation next in French on a neurosurgical topic. Okay, yeah. Very good. Nathalie, you've just arrived. Welcome. Go ahead, Nathalie. We can't hear you. Unmute yourself. Wait a minute. Okay, go ahead, Nathalie.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nathalie Gomski. I'm a year one in Abidjan, in Ivory Coast.
Well, you
Hello,
know,
Dr. Marco. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, Marco, she started her residency in Ivory Coast of neurosurgery.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. My bad, congratulations, Natalie.
Yeah, we've seen her, Dr. Fa. We've seen her from a student, and now she's a resident, a neurosurgical resident.
Great.
Very good.
Surgical woman.
Very good. Okay, Endal, could you please introduce yourself? I haven't met you. Can you hear me okay? Endal? Perhaps she does not. Mayank, I haven't met that patient. Okay, well, let's start. Okay, Naru, thank you very much for coming, and it's all yours. Welcome.
Thank you, John. It gives me pleasure to be with you, with us, all of them this evening. I'm so happy to be with you again. I am Nourdine Bankal. I am currently fourth year of residency course in WFN Rabat Center, but currently in an internship in the PhD of Tours University in France. And I'm so glad to be with you, and I will present you about spinal topic. Because the topic was intensive care. I am not neuro anesthetist, so I will just talk today about spinal cord compression without no trauma, and I will let my colleague and my friend Bouarifa to present us about cervical upper traumatism and the technique of a screw.
Yeah, excuse me, Naru, you're not screen sharing now, okay?
Okay, nice.
Okay, yeah, I had to bump you off during the introductions.
Okay, you
okay, perfect. Okay, perfect.
Nice. Okay, it is good. So I will go. So I will use this plan. Introduction. I will talk about anatomy and physiology and physiopathology. After I will talk about clinic and paraclinic, and I will talk about the topography form, the etiology, the management, and the outcome, and we will conclude. So non-traumatic spinal cord compression is a neurological pain or affection caused by compression of the cord and its root without any trauma. It can result from a lesion of the vertebral bodies and or intravertebral disc by hematogenous or lymphatic way. Also, that can caused by an expensive or cystic process in intramedullary or extramedullary subdural, or extradural, either a malignant or benign tumor lesion. We have to know that it is a neurosurgical emergency. The diagnostic and or therapeutic delay risk leaving definitive neurological sequelae. The importance of early diagnosis and cure we should think always about. What about the epidemiology? About the spinal cord compression without traumatic, the infectious affection in particular vertebral tuberculosis and other germs, and also during primary or secondary tumor. Osteoarticular tuberculosis, that means heart disease, counting for 3 to 5% of tuberculosis and 50% of extrapulmonary tuberculosis. Vertebral involvement is the most frequent of tuberculous osteoarthritis. The topography is proportionally similar. We have 10% cervical, 45 to 55% in dorsal level, and 40% lumbar and the dorsal lumbar location. And the dorsal lumbar T10 to L4 represent more than 75% in all the series. And we have the sex ratio approximately 1.5. So what about the embryology of the spinal cord? All of them, you know that the spinal cord is the central nervous system part that extends into the axial skeleton and provides the two-way traffic required to interact with our environment. So during pregnancy, early development of the spinal cord is influenced by the maternal dietary requirement for folate for closure of the neural tube. Later development requires the contribution of neural crest associating with the cord to form the dorsal root ganglia and ventral sympathetic ganglia. In week 3 of the gestation, the neural plate form and the caudal and of the neural plate remain narrow compared to the cranial and which rapidly expands in week 4. In week 4, when the plate fails to form the neural tube, the cranial end of the tube then forms a series of enlarged cavities, that means vesicle, that will eventually form the brain. The caudal end of the tube forms a narrower tube of relatively the same size along its length that will eventually form the spinal cord. Like you can see here, that is the embryology of the spinal cord. So, okay. So I will go quickly to the describe anatomy. The spinal cord is the most important structure between the body and the brain. The spinal cord extends from the foramen magnum, where it is continuous with the medulla, like you can see here in this figure, to the level of the first or second lumbar vertebrae. It is a vital link between the brain and the body, and from the body to the brain. The spinal cord is 40 to 50 centimeters longer and 1 centimeter to 1.5 centimeter in diameter. 2 consecutive rows of nerve roots emerge on each of its side. These nerve roots join distally to form 31 pairs of spinal nerves. You can see here, cervical cord, thoracic cord, lumbar cord. And after that, we can have here just, it is terminal cona medullaris. What about the segmental and longitudinal organization? The code is segmentally organized. There are 31 segments defined by 31 pairs of nerves exciting the cord. These nerves are divided into 8 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, and 1 coccygeal nerve. Dorsal and ventral root enter and leave the vertebral column respectively through intervertebral foramen at the vertebral segment corresponding to the spinal segment. The cord is sheeted in the same 3 meninges as is the brain. We have the pia, we have the arachnoid, and we have the dura. The dura is the third outer sheet. The arachnoid lies beneath it, and the pia closely adheres to the surface of the cord. The spinal cord is attached to the dura by a series of lateral denticulate ligaments emanating from the pial fold. You can see in this figure also. Here the ventral root, the dura, the arachnoid, and the pia. And here it is the ventral root and the dorsal ganglia. And here you have the canal, the central canal. Also, we have a dermatome, who is an area of skin supplied by peripheral nerve fibers originating from a single dorsal root ganglion. If a nerve is cut, one loses sensation from that dermatome, because each segment of the cord innervates a different region of the body. Dermatome can be precisely mapped on the body surface, and loss of sensation in a dermatome can indicate the exact level of spinal cord damage in clinical assessment of injury. It is important to consider that there is some overlap between neighboring dermatomes because sensory information from the body is relayed to the CNS through the dorsal root. The axon originating from dorsal root ganglion cells are classified as primary sensory afferent, and the dorsal root neurons are the first order sensory neurons. A transverse section of the adult spinal cord shows white matter in the periphery. I'm sorry, I will come back to show you the dermatome, what I am talking about. You can see here, we have the dermatome C7, C8, C6, and in the axilla we have C5, after we have T2. All this mapping oriented when we have lesion on one of this dermatome, we know that yes, we are in thoracic level, we are in cervical level. Now we are in lumbar level. So a transverse section of the adult spinal cord shows white matter in the periphery, gray matter inside, and a tiny central canal filled with CSF at its center. Surrounding the canal is a single layer of cells, the ependymal layer, and surrounding the ependymal layer is the gray matter, like you can see here. Is the gray matter, a region contains cells body shaped like the letter H, or like a butterfly. The two wings of the butterfly are connected across the midline by the dorsal gray commissure and below the white commissure. So spinal cord also have nuclei and lamina. The prominent nuclear group of cell column within the spinal cord from dorsal to ventral are the marginal zone, substantia gelatinosa, nucleus proprius, dorsal nucleus of Clark, intermediolateral nucleus, and the lower motor nucleus. This is the marginal zone, the nucleus proprius, the dorsal nucleus of Clark, and intermediolateral nucleus, lateral motor neurons, and medial motor neurons. And after we have also the lamina, we have 10 lamina. Like you can see here, we have the distribution of the cells and fiber within the gray matter of the spinal cord exhibit a pattern of lamination. The cellular pattern of each lamina is composed of various sizes or shapes of neurons, which led ReSEC to propose a new classification based on 10 layers lamina. This classification is useful since it is related more accurately to function than the previous classification scheme, which was based on major nuclear group. You can see here that is the group of lamina. The white matter surrounding the gray matter is white matter containing myelinated and unmyelinated nerve fiber. These fibers conduct information up to the ascending track or down to the descending the cord. The white matter is divided into the dorsal or posterior column or funiculus, lateral column, and ventral or anterior column. We will talk also about spinal cord tract. The spinal cord white matter contains ascending and descending tracts. The ascending tract, it is the nerve fiber comprise the ascending tract emerge from the first order neuron located in the dorsal root ganglion, and the ascending tract transmits sensory information from the sensory receptor to higher level of the CNS. Descending tract originate from different cortical area and from brain stem nuclei. The descending pathway carry information associated with maintenance of motor activities such as posture, balance, muscle tone, and visceral and somatic reflex activity. The dorsal root, like you can see here, the information from the skeletal muscle joint, it is relayed to the spinal cord by sensory cells located in the dorsal ganglia, like you can see here. This area receive the stimuli. And the dorsal root fiber are the axon originated from the primary sensory dorsal root ganglion cells. And each ascending dorsal root axon before reaching the spinal cord bifurcates into ascending and descending branches, entering several segments below and above their own segment. The ascending dorsal root fibers and the descending ventral root fiber from into discrete body area form a spinal nerve. There are 31 pairs, like I was told, spinal nerves. The dorsal root fibers segregate into lateral and medial division. The ventral root also are the axon of motor and visceral efferent fibers. In contrary, the dorsal root, it is from the afferent fiber. Here it is efferent fiber and emerge from poorly defined ventral lateral sulcus as ventral rootlet. The ventral rootlet from discrete spine, discrete spinal cord section unit, and form the ventral root, which contain motor nerves axon from motor and visceral motor neurons. The alpha motor nerves axon innervate the extrafusal muscle fiber while the small gamma motor neuron axon innervate the intrafusal muscle fiber located within the muscle spindles. The visceral neuron send preganglionic fiber to innervate the visceral organs. All these fibers join the dorsal root fiber distal to the dorsal root ganglion to form the spinal nerves. That is the spinal nerves root. The spinal nerve roots are formed by the union of dorsal and ventral root within the intervertebral foramen, resulting in mixed nerve joined together and forming the spinal nerves. Spinal nerve ramming includes the dorsal primary nerves, that's called ramus, which innervates the skin and muscle of the back, and the ventral primary nerves ramus, which innervates the ventral lateral muscle and skin of the trunk, extremities, and visceral organs. The ventral and dorsal root also provide the anchorage and fixation of the spinal cord to the vertebral coda. What about the blood supply of spinal cord? We have the arterial blood supply to the spinal cord in the upper cervical region that you can see here. Is derived from two branches of vertebral arteries, and the anterior spinal artery and the posterior spinal artery. At the level of medulla, the paired anterior spinal arteries join to form a single artery that lies in the anterior median fissure of the spinal cord, and the posterior spinal arteries are paired and form an anastomotic chain over the posterior aspect of the spinal cord. We have also a plexus of small arteries, that's in the arterial vasocorona, on the surface of the cord constitutes an anastomotic connection between the anterior and posterior spinal arteries. This arrangement provides an uninterrupted blood supply along the entire length of spinal cord. So what about the physiopathology? We know that spinal canal, it is enclosed. So the spinal cord is sensitive to the processes that reduce the light. It can be a direct mechanical action or circulatory disturbance leading to ischemia. Slow spinal compression leads to functional change in the spinal parenchyma first, then to lesions that become less and less reversible. This results in a syndrome medullary, progressing toward aggravation until the spontaneous evolutionary term of medullary section. In certain cases, the progressive evolution worsens suddenly in the form of a syndrome of more or less complete spinal section, which corresponds to a spinal softening linked to a compression of an important artery like anterior spinal artery, radicular artery, medullary. The diagnosis and treatment of spinal cord compression is therefore an emergency before the occurrence of irreversible spinal cord injuries. So what about the clinic? Anyway, compression may be acute, subacute, or chronic. Acute compression develops within minutes to hours. It is often due to trauma, but we will not talk about trauma today. We can have also acute disc herniation, sometimes severe bone of ligamentous injury causing hematoma, vertebral subluxation, or dislocation, but we will not talk about this topic. Sometimes we can have metastatic tumor. It is occasionally due to also abscess and rarely due to spontaneous epidural hematoma. Acute compression may follow subacute and after chronic compression, especially if the cause is abscess or tumor. Subacute compression develops over day to week. It is usually caused by a metastatic extramedullary tumor, a subdural or an epidural abscess or hematoma or process, a cervical or rarely thoracic herniated disc. Chronic compression develops over months to years. It is commonly caused by bony protrusion into the cervical, thoracic, or lumbar spinal canal, example due to osteophyte or spondylosis, especially when the spinal canal is narrow, as occurs in spinal stenosis. Compression can be aggravated by a herniated disc and hypertrophy of the ligamentum flavum. Less common causes include arteriovenous malformation and slow growing extramedullary tumors. Lesions that compress the spinal cord may also compress nerve roots or rarely occlude the spinal cord blood supply, causing spinal cord infarction. acute or advanced spinal cord compression causes segmental deficit paraparesis, quadriparesis if you are in cervical level. I will come back to the topographic form in a few moments. We can have also hyporeflexia, followed by hyperreflexia. Subacute or chronic compression may begin with local back pain, often radiating down the distribution of a nerve root. That means radicular pain, and sometimes hyperreflexia and loss of sensation. Sensory loss may begin in the sacral segment. Complete loss of function may follow suddenly and unpredictably possible, resulting from secondary spinal cord infarction. Spinal percussion tenderness is prominent if the cause is metastatic carcinoma, abscess, or hematoma. And also, intramedullary lesions tend to cause poorly localized burning pain rather than radicular pain, and to spare sensation in sacral dermatome. These lesions usually result in spastic paresis. Summary, to make the diagnosis, we should find the spine syndrome, that means pain, back pain, nevralgia, cervical nevralgia, any pain in the spine at the pressure of the spine, so spine syndrome. Lesional syndrome, it is about the radiculopathy, it is about the radicular pain, and it is we can take in hemicentric pain around dermatoma. And also we have under lesional syndrome who classified like disturbance of motor deficit, sensitive deficit, and when you go down, you can have also genitosphincterian disorder. And these three syndrome can make you to confirm we are in the case of spinal cord compression. So how to make the diagnosis with imagery? MRI is the best paraclinical exam to perform, to have, because that will help us to know the level of, to confirm the level of our compression, to know if this lesion we have, if it is intracanal or extracanal, and also if we have we are in extradural or we are in subdural. If you are in subdural, it is we are in subdural but extramedullary, or we are in subdural and we are in intramedullary. And also we have to know our semiology about the radiological spinal cord compression, because when you have extramedullary compression, the spinal cord here, like you can see here, the lead is so reduced, and like you can see here, you have a disrupted about the canal. And here it is one case about port disease. So we have also the vertebrae and the disc is extruded, and also we have here the abscess, physoparavertebral abscess with epidural who make big compression about the spinal cord in thoracic level here. Here it is one case of cervical port disease. And we have also, we can use also myelo MRI. We can use also spinal CT scan, because CT scan sometimes allow to know exactly when we have a lot of vertebrae lesion. It is a good characteristic to study the bone. It is the CT scan. So here we can have these cases of neurofibroma that we publish in one of our paper. Here also we have the pot disease example who make the spinal cord deformation like kyphosis, and it is in child form. And here, sometimes we can make also angiography because it is not just tumor, it is not just infectious or vertebral will be attend, but sometimes we have also malformation like fistula arteriovenous, who is so rare, and angiography help to confirm also the diagnosis. So that is cases of intramedullary process that we publish, but when we go to operate after the histopathology confirmed that is parasitic, like bilharziose cases. So that's an example. So the topography form, we have cervical spinal cord compression. The cervical spinal cord compression, it is the syndrome. It is typically you have quadri. The fourth member will be touched, and we have to know also something. Never we will have a syndrome up the lesion. Never. Always the chemical sign is always under the lesion. That's why it is important to know the dermatome and to classify the level of the compression. So we have also thoracic spinal cord compression, we have also conus terminal spinal cord compression, and we have also the child form. And in the child form, you will see that a most common thing is sometimes it is the spine who come like have scoliosis, kyphosis cases a lot of in child form, because the spine of child is growing. So any affection who can cause this damage. So the etiology can be subdural, can be extradural, intramedullary, subdural. That means extramedullary or intramedullary. Extradural, that means intracannular, but not through the dura. And the causes, who is so it is very important in tropical area like in Africa. It is the pot disease. After we can have a tumor, benign tumor or malignant tumor or metastatic process. And also we can have vascular causes like fistula and malformation, arteriovenous malformation, or also cavernoma, hemangioblastoma. Please, hemangioblastoma, we classify that in the tumor causes. And also we can have parasitosis, like I told you, like hidatidiose cases, like bilharziose cases, intramedullary, that I told you. So about the management in spinal cord compression, we should know that spinal cord compression, it is emergency. The purpose is to lift the compression to avoid the complication in the sequelae. Specific or non-specific antibiotic can use in infection etiology. Sometimes you can use corticosteroid to lift inflammation. Chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and functional rehabilitation is important in many cases. And the surgical technique we usually use in spinal cord compression, it is laminectomy to decompress. Percutaneous vertebroplasty in cases of bone lesion. Laminotomy, we use sometimes laminotomy in children cases more than adult, and also tumor excision. And it is important to avoid thromboembolic complication, special mattress, mobilizations, physiotherapy, low molecular weight heparin. And the following factors are involved about the outcome in the prognosis of this syndrome nature, is the prognosis of this syndrome, the nature of the lesion, the topography, if we are in extra or intradural, or anterior or posterior compression, neurological status before the intervention, duration of the deficit before treatment, and also the general condition of the patient. We can use the Karnofsky status. And it is important also when you, before to perform surgery or to treat your patient, to know also the classification of Markov to classify the type of spinal cord, if it is just the beginning of compression, or if it is if your compression is totally, you have a severe deficit also. So it is important to know that the deficit, which type of deficit, and the duration of the deficit before treatment, and also the associated defect with the condition of the patient. So in case of pot disease, bad tuberculosis, permanent healing, but sometimes we can have serious sequelae. Benign tumor, definitive healing, primary or secondary tumor lesion, it depends the function of, it depends of the histological type and the duration of the evolution. Anyway, severe sequelae is occur in 5 to 40% of cases. So in conclusion, non-traumatic spinal cord injury are serious conditions and constitute a diagnostic diagnosis and therapeutic emergency, especially in growing children. And in Africa, particularly in the tropic, pot disease remains the first etiology, followed by the vertebromedullary tumor. They are also sometimes due to discovertebral lesion with common germ and intramedullary parasitosis, such as bilharzitis. Imaging is of paramount importance, especially magnetic resonance imaging, which remains the examination of choice for an accurate neurological diagnosis of spinal cord disease. Depending on etiology, the treatment is medical and neurosurgical. So that is my reference, and your comment and approach is welcome. So thank you for your attention.
Okay, excellent. Let me just get you off the screen share a second, Naru.
Thank you.
Okay. Did I see you here? Okay, there we go. Okay, excellent. And there's a couple of people I want you to meet, Naru. Dr. Jamo, you came a little late. Can you introduce yourself to Naru?
Hello, thank you so much, Nuruddin. That was a fantastic one. Sorry, I started watching it, and from the hospital, I had to quickly take a transport back to the house. That was a wonderful presentation, very elaborate and very comprehensive. All sides of the pathology taken, and the clinical aspect, the surgical aspect. Well done, Nuruddin.
Okay, very good. Igor, are you there?
Thank you, Timo. Thank you.
Igor, are you there? Mayank, Arsene, because there are a couple of panelists that haven't met Naru, and part of the benefits of this platform is networking. Well, perhaps they stepped away. And Dal, we'll get this down. We're new. Marco, do you have any comments for Naru? Marco, perhaps Marco stepped away. Marco, are you there? No, perhaps not. I'm not having success, Naru. Dr. Fahd, do you have any remarks for Naru? You got to unmute yourself there. Let me unmute you, okay? Okay. Go ahead,
Okay,
go ahead.
good now.
Go ahead,
Oh,
Mark.
great. It was a very good presentation. Yes, I have one question about pathological exams. You said you do myelo MRI. You mean myelo scan or myelo MRI? I don't understand.
Okay, yes, you are right. I know that in some area we just have neuro scanner, but with MRI they try to make myelography with MRI. They perform reconstruction with MRI to do myelography, but in some area in Africa we don't have that, so we just use myelography, scanner. And last time when we didn't have any CT scan, they do myelography to inject opaque solution to the column. Some people perform another technique about punction to see in which level that will be disrupted, to say, it is in this level. But nowadays, yes, it is possible with MRI to make reconstruction to make reconstruction about myelography. It is possible nowadays.
Very good. Very good. Nathalie, do you have any comments or questions for your buddy, Nuru?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Nuru, for the presentation. Now, talking about the topographic presentation of the of spinal cord injury, I thought you would talk about the different clinical syndromes that we can have, depending on where the compression gets. Because though we can find ourselves in a cervical injury or in a cervical the cervical pathology, but the person will not always manifest himself with a quadriparesia or a tetraparesia. The patient can have we have different how can I say, medullary syndromes that we can have depending on where we have the compression. So I thought you would talk about that. Then I have a question too. It's about the treatment. You talked about laminotomy in children. I just want to ask what are the indications exactly in children, and how does it go? And what's the objective of that laminotomy?
Thank you, Natalie. I'm so happy to hear you again, and congratulations for your starting about your residency course. About your first remarks, I am agree because I am agree with you because I didn't go to the details about the topographic form. You are right. I see that it will be so big if I have to enter in the, because spinal cord compression is a big topic, and like I always told you, I think we don't have many times to do that. That will be borrow. That's why I just summarize that like that. But you are right. You are right. It is not all people, all persons who will come with tetraparesis, like you say. You can have nevralgia, cervicobrachial nevralgia, like you say, medullary syndrome. You can have that. Onset syndrome, like if I can say like that, onset syndrome. But many people in our area didn't come yearly to see the doctor. Yes, but like you say, I am agree with you. Yes, it is. But in children, why it is better to perform laminotomy? Because in children the spine is still growing. So if you perform laminectomy, like in adult cases, unfortunately, it is not benefit for children because you will create instability of spine. You will create instability of spine more than you want, because the purpose it is not to create to lift the compression, but not to also created instability of the spine of the spine. And it is depend also the type of pathology, because sometimes also in adult, in young adults, sometimes we perform laminotomy. If you have extradural lesion, you can perform laminotomy and you remove your lesion like meningioma, sometimes like tumor down that neurinoma, you can just perform laminotomy and after replace that. But in cases of you have infection of the bone, it is not important to do laminotomy. You should remove all of the pathological bone. So you will do laminectomy in these cases. You will do laminectomy. You will remove epidural, inflammatory or abscess or everything around. You will remove all of that. But in case of children, sometimes we don't need to go to operate. Sometimes it is chemotherapy, anti-tuberculosis with sometimes a corset to how can I explain that? It is
For the
like
stability.
yes, exactly to preserve the stability of the spine. So that. But in case of tumor process, who you can remove without to remove the bone in children to preserve stability of the spine, better to perform laminotomy. Laminotomy, that means you will just open the space.
That's a hole.
Okay, but you will put the back, like you do craniectomy or craniotomy. After you put back your bone flap, it is like that in spine also. Because in laminectomy, you will remove everything, the epineuses, you will remove everything, the lambs, you will remove everything to create space to decompress the spinal cord, to decompress the cord. So you have to remove the lamina, the lamb and the epineuses and to create the space.
Then I have this question. Can, for example, in low-income countries where we don't have microsurgical techniques, can we use laminotomy to abort the spine? Is it possible to use laminotomy?
Yes,
without,
I understand your question. Unfortunately, it is maybe sometimes difficult if you don't have a drill to perform laminotomy. But in cases where you don't have a lot of fusion of bone, you can also use Kerrison to perform that. It will be difficult, but in cases that you don't have choice, you have to perform laminectomy, but you should think about how to preserve the stability. That means after your surgery, you should put some gilet, some corset, something to fix the column.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome. It is a pleasure.
Okay, very good. I think we're about to wrap it up. Any closing comments from anybody? We thank everyone for coming. And we actually, thanks for another excellent presentation, Naru. I think you have the most presentations of anyone on this channel. But anyways, we've had a change in plans for the next presentation. Bouar Fa, a neurosurgeon from Morocco, is going to do it in French, which is great. We'll reach part of the French-speaking population of the neurosurgical community of Africa, which is great. So I'm going to close this officially, Naru, so that you have a separate video for your expanding video resume. And thanks everyone for coming. So I'm going to stop this officially right here. And thank you.